Hey everyone, welcome. Today we're diving into the fascinating world of international relations. It's basically all about how countries get along or don't on the world stage. So let's jump right in.
Have you ever really thought about it? Why some countries seem like they're best friends and others are, well, constantly at odds. It's kind of like a giant global playground, right? You've got some countries sharing their stuff and others picking fights. Figuring out why that happens, that's exactly what international relations is all about.
So how many players are we talking about in this global game? Well, right now there are 195 sovereign nations. 195. Just imagine that for a second. Each one with its own history, its own goals, and its own way of doing things. Yeah, it can get pretty complicated pretty fast.
But here's the thing, and this is really the key point. Just like people, no country can go it completely alone. They need to trade with each other, they need to work together to solve big problems, just to thrive. And that fundamental need to connect, that's the whole reason we even study international relations. Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we'll break down what international relations actually is. Then we'll look at the rules of the game that kind of drive how nations act. And finally, we'll bring it all back home and talk about why this matters in your world. Ready? All right, let's start with the big one. What exactly are we talking about when we say international relations?
So here's the official definition. At its heart, it's simply the study of the relationships between nations. It looks at everything from trade deals and peace treaties to major conflicts and alliances. It's kind of like the science of figuring out how the world works together, or, a lot of the time, why it doesn't.
And you know what's pretty wild is that even though countries have been dealing with each other forever, the idea of formally studying it is actually not that old. It really took off as a serious academic field after World War I. People looked at the devastation and basically said, whoa, okay, we have to understand this stuff better if we want to prevent another global catastrophe. And today, well, it's more crucial than ever.
And this quote makes a really important point. It's not just about governments. International relations involves huge organizations, cultural groups, and even individuals. It's this massive, tangled web of connections that stretches across the whole planet. All right, on to our next section. If international relations is a game, what are the rules? What actually drives a country's actions on the world stage?
Well, a lot of it boils down to these four core ideas. First, the nation-state. The country itself is the main player. Second, every nation is pretty much acting to protect its own national interest. Third, because of that, there's a constant struggle for power. And finally, the whole scene is always changing. It's super dynamic.
Yeah, that idea of power is a huge deal. One of the most famous thinkers in this field, Hans J. Morgenthau, put it very bluntly. He basically said it's all about the struggle for power. And that power isn't just military might. It can be economic strength, cultural influence. It's what allows a nation to achieve its goals and protect itself. Now, this struggle for power can go one of two ways. On the one hand, you get incredible cooperation, where countries team up through organizations like the United Nations to tackle global problems together. But on the other hand, it can lead to conflict, where competition over resources or influence creates tension, and in the worst cases, even leads to war. So, we've covered the what and the how, but now for the most important part. Why does any of this actually matter to you? So, why should you care? Well, the simple answer is that this field is the key to understanding and maybe even solving some of the world's absolute biggest challenges. And just look at this list. These are not small problems. Issues like climate change, global diseases, terrorism, they don't care about borders. A virus doesn't need a passport. No single country, no matter how powerful, can solve these things alone. They absolutely require international cooperation. And that's really the ultimate goal here. We study how nations interact to figure out how they can do it better. It's about finding ways to boost cooperation, reduce conflict, and hopefully create a safer, more prosperous world for every single person. So, I'll leave you with this question. Now that you know the basics, if you were a world leader, what would be your number one priority? Which one of those huge global challenges would you tackle first? Think about it. Your answer says a lot about what you value and the kind of world you want to live in.